In this video, we will look at how a large language model or LLM can be deployed with unified analytics. So let's start off by launching into a notebook. Once inside the notebook, we see some code artifacts, and these will be the ones which we will use. For this particular use case, we are using a Python virtual environment to manage the packages required. So this virtual environment is already created, and this environment is then further converted into a IPython kernel, and the packages used in this environment are what you see in the requirements.txt. So the IPython kernel that we will create out of this is we'll call it a question answer kernel. So once we create that, then we will be able to use this environment from the notebook to run our code. So the first thing we would want to do is to create a vector DB. So in this use case, we are using pre-trained LLM model, and we are doing in-context learning by providing context to that model, and that context is stored in a vector DB, and that vector DB we can create and deploy. Once that vector DB is created and deployed, then we will also be able to deploy LLM endpoint. For the creation of vector DB, we have used a few documents. So we have a mix of documents on some technical topics, and we have also used a document on restaurant reviews. So as you can see, we can, by using specific documents in the vector DB, we can tailor the output of the LLM to specific industry requirements. And we will demonstrate both the cases where we ask some technical questions and we ask some questions about the restaurant recommendations. So now we will set the kernel, and the first thing we will create is a vector DB. So we will go and run through some code here. So we are essentially converting the documents into their embeddings, which are vectors. While doing that, one of the important things that we are doing is also to keep track of our artifacts. So vector DB is an important artifact that we are creating, and we would like to log that vector DB that we used as one of the artifacts that we created. But before that, we are just checking whether our vector DB is relevant by just asking it a question and to see what relevant documents it provides as output. And we see that it has done it properly. So now the next step comes where we want to deploy this vector DB as an endpoint. So this is where we would now track the vector DB as an ML flow artifact. Just to take a look at it, we will switch to ML flow. And you can see that the question and answer is registered as an experiment under ML flow. And there are multiple runs that we have done. So there are multiple vector DBs that have been logged. So this is the one that we recently logged. The actual vector DB artifact is stored into a object store. And this is how we can use tracking mechanism to ensure that we can go back and understand what artifact we used if we ever need to do that. Okay, so now we will go ahead and deploy. Now the deployment is done as a custom endpoint on top of Kubeflow Kserve. That custom endpoint is done using a Docker container image. So this has the details on the code as well as the Docker definition of that container. However, we have already built it before. So we would just use the ready-made image and we would go ahead and deploy it under Kubeflow Kserve as an endpoint. So now we can see that the endpoint is now getting deployed, and within a few seconds it will be ready to accept requests. So you can see that it has a internal and external URL. Both of these URLs are protected and they need a SSO token for them to be accessed. So these are secure URLs. The next step will be for us to also deploy the LLM model itself. For that, again, we would have packaged the pre-trained LLM model into a Docker container. The code and the Docker file are available, but we will nonetheless use a Docker image that's pre-created. Once we deploy it again as a custom endpoint under Kubeflow kserve, we will be able to go and see that that endpoint is also coming up. And within a few seconds, that endpoint will also be ready to accept connections. As before, this is also a secure endpoint that requires a SSO token for it to respond to the requests. So now we have both the vector DB as well as the LLM endpoint ready. Now we will use an app, we will deploy an app which we will use to query these endpoints. So we will deploy the app using the custom app deployment framework. So here we specify app details as well as an icon, app icon. So this is where we need to provide the app code as a Helm chart. But we have already deployed it previously, so the Helm chart is already persisted within Unified Analytics. So instead of uploading it again, we will just use the existing one. This is a templatized version which we can modify for any app, but for now we will just continue with it as is. And now the app will be deployed, and you can see that it will go through a phase for a while, and after that it will become ready. Once it is ready, it will create a secure URL which is also governed by SSO. And now you can see that the web UI of the app is visible. So this app has certain parameters we can set for LLM. One of them is the number of tokens that LLM generates in output. We set that to 100 tokens, which means the output will roughly contain 100 words. If we need, we can increase this more. Now we will ask the first question. So in this case, let's just ask a question about a restaurant recommendation for a particular person. The LLM will generate a response to this question. Now the LLM takes a little bit of time to generate the response, and that is because there are no GPUs on this cluster. So this inference can be made faster by the use of GPUs. So now you can see that it has generated output. and it basically has given a response about what that particular person likes, and based on that what could be a restaurant recommendation for that person. So it's a pretty good intelligent response that we got. So now let's just ask a technical question. So for the technical question that we asked, it has generated a good response. We can see that it's a relevant response on that particular topic. So that was the demonstration for LLM deployment with unified analytics. Thank you.